Welcome to another episode of the Sarah Scoop Show. I'm your host, Sarah Ruhlman, here to give you the scoop. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another live episode of the Sarah Scoop Show. Today, my guest is Damian Powers, who many of you know from Love is Blind, and I am going to add him in here with me soon. And a lot of you have already submitted questions and things that he will be answering. Hi!
Hey, Sarah, how's it going?
Great. Thank you so much, Damian, for joining me today. So let's first start back to when Love is Blind was first coming on your radar. How did you end up on Love is Blind?
Yeah, so that's a question I get quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think the coolest concept about the show was they were trying to find people that were very genuine, not chasing clout because at the time we didn't know it'd be Netflix. We didn't know Nick and Vanessa would be the host. And ironically, they found me on Tinder. So, yeah, probably the only one from Love is Blind that got found on a dating app. And started talking to this girl, and like we sort of like conversation-wise hit it off on the same level. Joined each other on social media, and then after like a week and a half of talking, she's like, "How's your life? Like, how's your family life? Like, what do you do for work?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's pretty intense." And she goes, "I'm actually a casting producer." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And I sent back to her, I go, "Catfish." And she goes, "No, I'm not." And she's like, "I'll FaceTime you right now." I was like, "Yeah, well, Catfish probably wouldn't say that." So yeah, so that's pretty much how it is. I started going through the process, and then I didn't really know till a few days before. They're like, "Hey, yeah, we want you. We're gonna be shooting in a few days." And I was like, "All right, let's do it." So
Yeah, your friend Kenny from the show, in the little questions we posted before, he said, ask how many matches he had on Tinder before.
yeah, so there's a joke. It wasn't really shown in the show, but day one when Nick and Vanessa came in and introduced themselves, everybody was talking, and they're like, some people are on dating apps, and I'm like, yeah, that's how they found me. And I was like, it's crazy. I was getting like 100 matches like every day or two, and they're like, what? So they started calling me One Hundo on the show. Like all the guys on the guys side were like, hey, One Hundo. But it was just because even on dating apps, I don't think a lot of us just do it intentionally to plan on meeting necessarily somebody in person or hooking up. It's more, am I still in the game? Like, can I match with somebody that I'm attracted to? And that's sort of where I was at. I was just swiping, I was like, oh, who do I match? So that's sort of what it came down to. And I was just tired of it. So,
Yeah, and I guess if you kind of think about it, I mean, dating apps, you don't see the person totally. I guess you do have to build a communication kind of like on Love is Blind.
yeah, for sure. It's,
Go ahead. Sorry.
oh, no, I was saying like just overall the whole concept, between how we do dating apps and how we met each other on Love is Blind is completely different, but in a circumstance is the same because somebody cannot look like what they do on the dating app, right? So I think we've all ran into those issues where somebody isn't who they said they were or how they acted. So.
And what was it then after the whole, catfish scenario, and then you started talking to this casting person? What was it about the show that really drew you into it?
I think that's the biggest thing. So a lot of people don't see it, but I was like a fugly kid, obviously your parents are like, oh, like you're adorable, you're a good looking guy, like everybody's gonna support you in that one way. But I mean, I had like long, bleach blonde, curly hair. I had silver teeth because I was raised in Germany for a few years. So that when they put caps on, they were all silver caps. So I got picked on a lot in school, and then never like really just fit in with anybody. And then in high school, I joined theater, and met a lot of friends doing plays and stuff like that, and still got picked on. So I sort of didn't have a glow up till after I got out of college and started hanging around new people and going to the gym. And then like I went from this like fugly kid to this grow up kid, but the internal nice, sweet, fun, humble Damian was still inside. But when I would go out to a bar or a concert, some type of scene where you're interacting with, the opposite sex, or like however you choose you want to meet somebody, they would look at me a lot of times for what I look like. Because you are, when you go into a bar somewhere, you're like, oh, that's the type of person I'm attracted to, right? So, and for me, yeah, that's great. But I also felt there was so much superficialness involved with that. And 90% of the time, that didn't go anywhere. They didn't really know or accept me for who I was on the inside, right? And so when this concept came up, I was like, it's scary. Like you're going to date these people. You're never going to see them unless you possibly get engaged, right? And I was like, and no disrespect, like really in the most utmost respect for people. It's people with disabilities, like people that are born blind or a tab that they can still fall in love from somebody from who they are on the inside without actually knowing how they look like. So I took some time and thought about it, and I was like, this concept is crazy, but in a world where dating is so unconventional, what would be the difference in giving this a shot when nothing else has really worked? So that's sort of where I was in the stage, and I was like, you know what, I'm scared. I was scared to death, but I was like, I'm gonna do it. So
What would you describe then your experience in the pods, like actually doing this, like building these connections with people, only talking to them?
I mean, it's just like
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, it was. So the night before we found out we were going to go in and start dating these people in a pod like thing, you don't know what to expect when you walk in this room, right? I was thinking we're going to be like in a booth, like back and forth or something.
Yeah.
And I stayed up the whole night before in this room, and they're like, think of what you want to ask these people, these females tomorrow, the people you're going on dates with. And I stayed up all night, and I had a sheet of paper, and I was like, what's your favorite food? Do you like to travel? And literally, like in an hour and a half, 2 hours, that's all I could come up with. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I was like, I'm just gonna wing it. And I got in there and walked into the pods, and it was set up like you saw on the show, 1 through 10, right? They said, hey, Damian, you're in pod 1, Kenny 2, Cameron 3, whatever. And you didn't really know who you were walking into the room to go on a date with. It was like every date you didn't know. So I'd walk in and I was just like, hey, and I remember my first date, it was just, you walked in and I was like, hi, and they're like, hello. And I'm like, hey, and they're like, hi, and you're like, what do we do? And they're like, this is super awkward, right? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, well, what's your name? So then you just start communicating, talking. And I think the coolest thing about the experience is within an hour, like, we started speed dating. I dated 15 females, 7 minutes piece, my first date. And each one got easier. You went in and sometimes you're just like, this is dead. Like, I don't even want to talk to you again because there wasn't any connection there. But some of them, the conversation just flew. You'd say something, the other one's like, yes, yes, me too. And in a sense, you start to fall in love with a voice. So you learn to adapt. You lose your sense of sight and all your other senses enhance, right? You can't touch either. So your like hearing becomes like this emotional roller coaster. You hear their voices and you're like, wow, it's like beautiful, like it's sweet, or whatever the case is. And then you fall in love with personalities. But yeah, it was absolutely mind blowing. But you'd be amazed at how easy it became after just a matter of like an hour or two, and it just started flowing. And you're like, okay, this is easy. This is like, I want to go on it again. And then we're like, oh, when do we go again? When do we go again? And the funny thing is, even me and Giannina, our first date went horrible. Like, I was like, I wish they would have shown it. I was like, I don't want to go on a date with this chick again. Like, it was just rough. So it's just, some of those things are incredible, but once you give somebody the time to understand them and what they're going through and how they are, you start to see a more beautiful side of them. And that's what was really important to me, is even though my first date didn't go well with her, I was like, let's talk again and see what we may have missed there. And, we just kept going with it. So.
Yeah. And I mean, being part of the first season, you guys really did go in there just no idea. You weren't able to watch it beforehand or anything. So it's really cool that you're able to, open up and share so much about what was going on with everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, and that, I think it's one of the biggest things is like sometimes I'm like, wow, I'm so glad they didn't show that part, right? But there were times in these pods where our connections were so strong, we just opened up and we felt like we could tell them anything. And imagine if you're on the phone with somebody or you're texting them, right? The conversation will really go either way because you're not seeing their facial expressions, you're not seeing, how their lips are moving. I can say like, have a good day to you, and then I could say it in a really mean way, like, have a good day. You know what I mean? And your facial expressions change how that word is meant. So in the pods, you could sometimes tell by the fluctuation of a voice how somebody felt, but taking that away allowed us all to be more vulnerable because it wasn't physical. It wasn't how did I say that? And even though I may have meant it in that way, do I have time to grow from that in a short period of time with the opposite person, right? So it's all how things were said, and not being able to see facial expressions, that we were all able to become more vulnerable in that sense and really get to know each other deeper for who we are on the inside, not what we look like.
And so, how long did you guys get to know each other? Because I know we saw, I'm not sure how many connections you might have had, but how long was it before you guys decided, let's get engaged?
So every couple was sort of different. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it was different paces, as you sort of saw in the show. Me and Giannina took longer. I think we were right at 8, 9 days. Oh, wait, I think I lost you. Hold on.
I can
Let me.
still hear you. It just froze for a second on me there. Yes, you're back. There we go.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
don't, there we go. Yep, you're back.
There we go. Um, yeah. So I mean, for me and her, it was like 8, 9 days, but we were dating. I mean, several people. You know, up to 18 hours a day, and
Mm-hmm.
people were like, "How could you fall in love that quick? How could you get engaged that quick?" And I'm like, "Trust me, like I was like, there's no way this is gonna happen, right? There's absolutely no way. Am I going on the show, getting engaged within 9 days, which was our time in the Pods Max release, what you could have in there, and fall in love with somebody without seeing them." But I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try it. At least I can say like I did the thing. And but think about this. I've been in a 4-year relationship, a 6-month relationship, a year relationship. And in that time, you go, you're dating a superficial person, right? Like they're on social media, they're worried what they look like. You go to dinner, they're on their phone all the time. You go to a movie, you don't talk. You go out with friends, they're communicating with them. The only time you really get to talk is maybe when you're home at dinner, or otherwise you're on the couch watching a movie or Netflix and you're like, shh, no, this is an important part. So you don't really have that super great communication with your spouse like we may have 10 years ago, right? Um, and in the pods, we were dating for an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time, just getting so deep in information that I'm not worried. I don't have a cell phone. They took all electronics away. We had no TVs, no radios, nothing. So it was just us talking and communicating. How's your family life? What are your ambitions in life? Like, how do you define yourself? Where do you want to be at in 10 years? Do you want to get married? Do you want kids? What would you name your kids, right? Like all these different things. And you just get to the core of who people really are. And I think that was the most incredible thing is, in that experience, me and Gina, like I said, we took 8 to 9 days to really pull that. And she didn't believe in the concept of marriage once you get, or I didn't think when we did the engagement. I mean, if you saw that scene, I was shaking. I was like, man, she told me to stand up, and we had mic issues too. So it was definitely it was an emotional roller coaster, and there's some behind the scenes stuff in there that just were like, that made it even more emotional. So it's it's just amazing. If you can spend time without electronics and TV and all these other attributes, and you can apply it to just really listening to your partner or somebody important in your life, you can grow so much, not just with them, but within yourself. And we were able to do that. And that's how an engagement was possible after 9 days, because we felt like we've dated for years and we got through all the uncomfortable conversations and the deep conversations. And you forget the cameras are there. So, in a sense, that's why this was so raw to the world, is because when you're in these moments, our show was completely 100% unscripted, right? There was nothing that they said, you have to say this, you have to do this. It was, you wanted to, right? I didn't want to leave there without not seeing her. I was like, said, I'm going to ask you a question. You have a choice to make. And when she asked me, I was like, did I just hear you right? You know what I mean? And and real quick, the funniest thing is all of us guys were on one side of the facility, the girls were on the others, right? So we were in there. Me and the guys were always discussing when a group of us wasn't on a date. We were in there like, hey, how'd your date go? People were like, oh, my date went so well with so and so, and then you're like, wait, what? Mine went well with her too. You know what I mean? They're like, she was in there talking about, yeah, man, like that girl's like turned on and all about sex stuff. And I'm like, wow, my conversation with her was super emotional. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't get that vibe from her. So people are dating different, same people, and getting different things based off of personality and traits. Um, and mine and Giannina's dates were always super sweet, super emotional. So I didn't see the fiery side until we met each other and we started to experience all these things where you start realizing like, hey, you could clash. So
What was that like dating the same people? Because obviously, like you and the guys probably all became friends, and then you're all dating the same girls. Was that, did you guys pretty much kind of connect with who you connected with, or was there some weirdness
yeah,
to that?
I think there was on some side, especially like within the pods. But I would say this. I mean, the concept people go, "Hey, would you do The Bachelor, Damian?" Or Giannina, would you do The Bachelor? But like my whole concept is I've always been more on track with a one type of girl relationship, right? The Bachelor to me is you're dating all these people, and it puts the girls in sort of a rough situation and the guys where I may go on a date with you and kiss you, and then I go on a date right after you and kiss the next girl, and then you sleep with the third girl, and then you know what I mean. So to me, in this whole sense of dating, I was like, yeah, these guys are dating her. I'm not. It's some people I think it became more of a competition. Like, I'm gonna get her, I'm gonna get her. But overall, to me, it was like, hey, like if it's meant to be and it's gonna work out, it's gonna work out, and we'll be on the same page. And if not, it's not genuine. So for me, being able to know that, hey, when Amber met Barnett, Cameron met Lauren, Kenny and Kelly, right, me and G, when we met, we know that no matter the conversations or dates they had with me or the other guys or the other girls, it was the first time that physically we were coming together to be joined, on bringing that mental connection to the physical connection. And to me, there was no jealousy really. It was just like, okay, like, hey, we all ended up with who we were supposed to. So,
And I know that beforehand we had put out like questions and comments and things, and a lot of people were saying they really like, I guess they connected with you and G in your relationship because you guys were very open and had issues that you talked about and overcame. So, like, how did you guys end up after the wedding and everything, like reconnecting and making it work?
yeah. So, one, I've said this a lot. The wedding it was very, 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 very hard and tough situation. One, I want no woman to ever go through that experience, nor man. And the decision at the altar was everybody's like, oh, like there's no way you couldn't have known, but I really just needed to feel, the moment there. And from the beginning, G didn't really believe, like I said, in traditional marriage where you get married, you combine your bills, you have to move in together. Now you got to think about having kids, right? It's a lot of pressure. Um, and I'm one of those people that, I was sitting here thinking things through. I was like, well, I took all these facts from our relationship, how we clashed, how we got along, because we had so many great and fun moments on the show as well, right? Um, but in that moment, like when she said I do, I think I was so happy to hear it, but I also felt like I didn't know if it was to protect me or her, and I was just thrown off in those moments. And I wanted to do at that point was to protect us from possibly getting married and then it not working out because I've seen that like where you feel like it's rushed, all the pressures, and G like when she gets in like really pressured situations, she's like a little, time bomb. And for me, I was like, like I owe it to me and her for us to become best friends first, and that was my thought. It wasn't anything to embarrass her. It was just a rough and horrible situation. I wish that there were so many different ways I could have done it. And we didn't really get to see each other or talk before the wedding, right? So for me, I didn't have those moments until I got to the altar. Um, and right after about 3 hours after the wedding, she reached out and she's like, "Hey, I understand why you did this. It hurt. It was rough, but I still want to try to make things work. Can we meet up and figure out why this happened? What led to this?" And we talked about it, and we both agreed. And we're meeting up, and then I'm getting texts from my groomsmen, and she's getting texts from her bridesmaids. We're like, hell yeah, we're out with Damien's groomsmen right now, and the groomsmen, yeah, we're out with her bridesmaids, and I'm like, what? You know what I mean? So, um, everybody sort of got along in the situation, and trust me, she beat me down for a few months after it. So she was still like, yeah, at least you didn't get turned down at the altar, and I'm like, yeah. So, um, but we've had a challenging relationship, but we've both grown so much, and it's been an amazing journey. And it's led to where we are today, and it's been just like I said, something that most people won't ever understand, but it's beautiful beautiful in ways that people can't understand as well. So it's definitely been a journey for sure.
And what's life like now for you guys?
We're still together. We're still together.
I feel like that in
And
the comments, I don't know if you can see them, but that is the most popular question on here. Are they together? Are they together?
yes, 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 we are still together. And so like, we talked about moving in together and all this stuff, but we talked about it and my lease didn't end and then her lease overlapped and then we're like, you know what, like right now it's good to have our own space. In quarantine we were able to have our own separate spaces and it's like, oh well, now we have two places to go. um, so we still hang out all the time. Like everything's been like fun and adventurous. We've been, we taken trips together and even, people ask like, what happened with you and her family? My family like wanted to meet her on the show. The time frames just didn't work out. And she spent Thanksgiving with us right after we got off the show in 2018. And then she spent Christmas with us right after that. So her and my family get along really well. I get along with her family really well. I went to a Venezuelan. How's that nothing interferes with me? I went to a Venezuelan wedding, a few months after I got off the show, for her cousin. And I was like one of the, probably only people there that didn't speak Spanish. And I'm like, before I got down there, I was on like Rosetta Stone and I'm trying to understand main words and like common greetings. And I'm like, all this stuff. But it was so much fun. And it was just nice to have that cultural diversity. And I think all of us lacked that a little bit more. So it's everything's been great. Like I said, it's been a learning curve for both of us, but we've both grown together and, we've had like an exciting journey that people just can't understand. And it's not an easy journey, but nothing worth it's ever been easy, I feel like. So
And I mean, even just like the traveling that you guys are doing and all of that, you guys are reaching so many people in this chat alone. People are like, hi, I'm from Japan. I'm from Costa Rica. Like, what does it feel like to know that you went on the show, you found love, all of these things, and now all of these people from around the world are watching your journey? What is that like?
yeah, it's crazy, it's I always like I've always been one of those people that just I'll break my back for somebody else. Like, I mean, if a friend calls me at 3 in the morning, an hour and a half away with a flat tire, I'm the first person to call. Hey, Damian, can you come help me out? I'm there, right? And I always have tried to give back, whether it was charity or events or whatever the case was, pretty much my whole life. And I wondered, I was always like, how can I help not just the world, but people? And I never realized by going on the show and sharing my story, how many people related to my situation, how many people have went through in some type of way what we all went through on the show. Every couple was relatable in their own way, right? Even the sex conversation with me and Giannina, where she's like, "Hey, like, you said it's the best sex of my life, or the best sex of your life, Damian. Well, have you realized I haven't returned that compliment?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah." I mean, in that moment, I cringed. I didn't even want to rewatch it when it came out. So
Yeah.
it was super hard to deal with, from a man perspective of no guy wants to hear that. But the understanding side of me took a deep breath and I said, why doesn't she have the right to express that? Would I rather have been in private? Yes. But why do we have that fear to express how we really feel? Because otherwise your relationship's not going to work if you don't have that communication. And I was like, either I can run from this, get defensive and, blow up at her and, argue with her and all this stuff, or I can talk to her, understand on a deeper level how I can make this better. And I think that's been the biggest thing is all these people from around the world have tuned in and they said, man, like, I've had that problem with my girlfriend. Like, how did you handle that situation? And I'm like, wow, hundreds of DMs and comments. And I'm like, it's just incredible to see how many people that we've touched, especially during this crisis. Like, we went through a quarantine dating experience back in 2018, right? And then when it's released, we go into quarantine and it's just like people are sort of like living through what we went through. We saw people getting engaged because of our show. Like, they actually did a pod type experience and then like they were joking around, they came out and they did real proposals.
Yeah.
And
Did
it
you
was
know
just,
that your show was coming out now? Because you filmed it, you said 2018. Were
yeah.
you aware it was coming out, or have you just were you guys all just, we're
We were in the
waiting to see
dark.
what it's, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, we were pretty much in the dark, and we didn't know that it would blow up any way that it did. You're like you hope that something comes of it, But me also, I was like, man, I hope that sex scene doesn't get shown. I hope that, this isn't shown because, you become, after so long, like there's this fear of how you're going to be portrayed. We've all seen different reality shows. And I think that the producers did a pretty great job of just like putting it out there. They're like, yo, Damian, like you cry a lot, man. Like, what's up? And I was like, well, I remember when you cried on TV, you know what I mean? But, to me, it was about being able to be vulnerable and break down and let the world know that, hey, this is Damien. If you don't like it or can't accept it, then do I deserve your time or do you deserve mine? Maybe not. But I think it's the biggest thing is we try to put on fronts in front of people or new groups or settings because it's what we're supposed to do. And I think everybody on this show helped change that persona and say, hey, you can be who you want to be, right? It started with the circle that sort of blew up big, then our show, then Too Hot to Handle. But it's like, be who you want to be and don't be afraid to show it. And that our show taught us to bring down our barriers and say, I can be me. And do you love me for that? And the world just, I got a lot of negative hate stuff after the wedding. Trust me. I mean, I got blasted and beat, but people also didn't understand like what I'd went through. There were a lot of things that weren't shown, right? But it wasn't ever to hurt her. It wasn't ever to break her. It was really because I felt that I knew we would last and go longer in a relationship and really have a chance to get to know each other if we became best friends first. And we grew from that, and it worked. It did. So it was a hard decision, but we are where we are today because of that. So.
So we know that you guys are still together, which is awesome. And
Yeah.
what about the rest of the cast? Do you still communicate? Are you guys all still good friends?
Yeah, yeah. Me and Cameron communicated a pretty good bit. Him and Lauren are doing awesome. Amber and Barnett, I see them pretty regularly. They were meant for each other. I don't know, like on the show, you're like, would that work? But they were just like, when I say made for each other, they're the funniest. Amber still laughs and snorts all the time. Barnett loves it. So it's just they're just jokesters in a box, and they can handle it well with each other. Mark's doing great. He's him and Jessica obviously did their split. And like I said, everything sort of worked out for a reason. They were able to grow, I think, so much from each other on the show. And Mark's in a new relationship. I met her the other day for the first time. He wanted me to meet her, an amazing girl, great qualities. Jessica's in a new relationship, and she's got somebody that fits her persona of what she wanted, and she's happy. Kenny's in a newfound great relationship as well, and he's killing it. He moved to North Carolina, but he's doing really well. Saw Kelly a few weeks ago, and she's on her fitness life journey thing, still developing who she is, and her love for people, and she's growing. So everybody's really, I think, found the light at the end of the tunnel where we felt for so long it was dark, and we're like, okay, how is this everything going to work out in the end? And it has in its own way. So.
And I've seen, there was such a good response to the show. I think it was just because it was something different that people hadn't seen. And we watched all of you, and it was one of those shows where you just couldn't stop watching. You had to find out who stays together, all of that.
Yeah.
So I've seen that there has been a lot of, good response, and they're making new seasons. What advice do you have for people that are wanting to apply to be on the show, or they get picked like you did and they're going through this journey?
Yeah, and so it's an interesting concept. I've wanted to see another season come out of this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. It's like the first season worked so well, like it just from a psychology standpoint, people are like, "Is this real?" And like I said, I'll never be able to express the emotions I felt in those pods. I've never felt in my life. Never. I mean, except for like your own family that you just love them to death. Like I've never felt that kind of just like impact of mental love. Like you don't care what they look like. You want to meet them. Like everything else subsided, and you can't fake that. And there was a big worry, I think, about season 2 and 3 is seeing how big this blew up. Like there's going to be people chasing the clout, or which I just learned that word after the show came out. I wasn't even big on social media, so I went from 1,200 followers to 800,000. So it was, but you couldn't fake it. Like even sometimes, like in the pods, we try to be, I would try to talk in a deeper voice at first, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like, yeah, nobody could see me. I was laying back in the chair, like a psychiatrist with you, laying in a psychiatrist studio and popping my feet up, and I'm like, yeah. Me and I think me and Kelly ended up doing handstands or something one day, and I was playing tic tac toe with Amber on a date. Like, I mean, just you started doing stuff to pass
Mhm.
time and have fun in there. And people on the new seasons, don't go on there to chase clout. The best thing you can do, people DM me and they're like, hey, like, I'm thinking about auditioning for season 2 or 3. What advice do you have? And my biggest advice is be you. Don't try to don't try to be us. Don't try to inherent qualities or try to answer things from what you saw from us on the show. Be you, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for something new. They're looking for something different. They're looking for somebody that's willing to take that leap. And like I said, there were probably 30 of us that started on the show, and they only followed 6 of our journeys, and pretty much 5 or 6 of our journeys. So if you think about that, you can get on the show, but it doesn't mean you're going to be seen. Your story's going to be seen unless you're really authentic and very sincere about it. So just be yourself. Um,
Get a
and
Tinder. Maybe they'll find you.
actually, yeah, so there is a big thing right now that there are scouts and casting people. If you're in Chicago or New York, that's where season 2 and 3 are going to be casted out of. And if you're on Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, you're likely to swipe on a casting producer that's interested in you. I'm not saying, go throw up a picture of Love is Blind on your profile, but it's it I I'm actually really excited about this because people I think will finally understand that it wasn't staged. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, this isn't happening. Like other people are gonna feel what we felt, and they're gonna be like, this is what it was like. I'm excited, and I feel like this is gonna be the new Bachelor. Like it's a new world. It's social media has taken over. I mean, this people needed something new, and I'm just excited to sort of see how this blows up and then where it goes to from here. So
Was
we'll
there
see what.
anything that happened in the show that we didn't get to see? Because I know there was obviously a lot of filming that was happening and they cut it down. Was there anything
Yeah.
that happened that you really wish would have been shown? Like something
De-
funny or just.
yeah, definitely probably some more like pod scenes. I don't think I really jumped into episode 2 or 3, but like some of I wish they'd do a blooper section from the scenes of some of our dates. You know what I mean? Even me and Kelly dated like every day, pretty much through the end of the process. And we just got along really well. We were funny. And like our last few dates, like we both were like, hey, did you find your match? She's like, yep. She's like, you? I was like, yep. She's like, you want to take a nap? And I'm like, yeah. So we slept through our whole day, you wanted to rest. Me and Lauren, like when we'd go on a date or whatever, she was like, oh, like, I'm like nerdy and I did theater and all that stuff. And I'm like, oh, cool, me too. And then we try to reenact, you probably saw it in the reading, like, we try to reenact voices of characters, and the reunion reenactment was horrible, but you really got in and just had a lot of fun with it. There was some, cool things with different gift exchanges that we were able to do, but you couldn't pass notes. You couldn't you know show any other characters or pictures of you or your family or friends. It was like, hey, here's something that means something to me, I want you to have it, right? And you could do that. But other than that, I mean, I also wish they'd have shown more of the fun, adventurous moments that, me and Giannina had as well, because it did look like we argued a lot. And then it was like, people were like, you're gaslighting her. And I honestly didn't even know the term gaslight like really meant. And I was like, so I went and Googled it, and I'm like, I could see how it came off that way. But I'm also one of those individuals, everybody that knows me, that I stay very calm and collective through a lot of things. And I try to process, like, why is this happening? If I say this, what happens? If I say this, so I'm always trying to figure out the best way to get out of a situation in a positive way. And sometimes it can come off like, oh, you were setting her up for that. I'm like, no, it wasn't my intention. But I could see, like, going back, I'm like, okay, I could see that, right? So, which, bless her for, putting up with that. But we've talked about it, and it's just our personalities, they're so different, but we bring a lot to the table with each other. So,
Yeah, and I think that is good for us to know, like as viewers or everyone joining, it's like you guys did film this a couple years ago now, so it's like you've had time to build and change
yeah.
or things are different. A couple other questions real quick. When you were in the pods, did you have a notebook or something when you're dating all these women, like to keep it separated, or did everyone just
Yeah.
kind of remember?
No, no, no. We got this cool little notebook, and it was like, hey, you can write down notes. But I think after, and one, going back to this filming 2 years ago, like I think even us, we had trouble understanding it was the first series really of its kind.
Yeah.
So they had to figure out how to put everything together. How did it make sense? How did story flows? Which people worked? Which conversations are important for us to put in here? And same thing with like the notebooks is we had them, but in the beginning, I don't even think one, it wouldn't have made good TV in a sense, but it was like, oh, your name's so and so, date one. I dated, it was Diamond, I'm like, okay, Diamond. Um, cheerleader, like whatever. You're going down writing this whole list out, right? And you weren't really paying attention. You were so busy trying to write these little notes and details, like don't want to. And then finally, I think all after like day two, we were all like, "Hey, look, we're just going to try and run this without the notebooks. We're too busy putting our heads down here the whole time
Right.
that we weren't in tune." I said, "Look, I said my thought was is they're important enough to us. When I walk in there, I'm going to know their voice and I'm going to remember their name
Right.
because I'll make
And
it a
I'm
trigger."
and you started just dating fewer and fewer as the time went on, I'm
Yeah,
assuming. Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
daily, every day. Yeah, it was less and less. So, and it was interesting. I could rate somebody like a number one, and they rated me a 15, and I could go back on a date with the one that I rated a 15, and they rated me a one because they saw something in me I didn't see in them. So the algorithm, me and Rory, which Rory was like our on-site psychiatrist, like he was a part of the show too, right? He was at the engagement stage, and his story didn't get shown along with Matt Thomas, but Rory was just like one of those easy to talk to. His voice was so calming. He's like, "Hey, Damian, what's going on, buddy? Do you want to talk?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm in love and I don't know what to do." And he's like, it's okay, take deep breaths. I'm like, huh, huh. So um, even him, he was like, "Dude, I can't figure out this algorithm, and he creates video games for a living. He's like, "I do algorithms all the time." He goes, "But this makes no sense of how we ended up with this." And every time we thought we got close, we'd end up on a date with somebody we didn't think again. So it was absolutely just mind blowing on how everything was put together. But like I said, it all really worked out in its own special way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, been such a cool experience. And I mean, I'm sure, you mentioned kind of you went from like all of these people to now following your life and everything. What like advice do you have for people that follow you after going through this journey when it does come to looking for love now?
Um, I think the biggest thing is for us to find love within ourselves. And it's hard to say, but I feel like if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of someone else. If you can't put time into yourself, how are you going to put that time into someone you genuinely care about, right? Because if you start putting all your time into somebody else and you haven't given yourself love, then at some point it's going to be hard for them because then they're going to try and help you, right? So me finding myself was super hard, and I don't post on social media a lot. Like I had this whole thing with Giannina. I'm like, put your phone down, talk to me, like do what we did in the pods, right? I want you to like face to face with me. And then when the show came out, I was like, oh my gosh, you're posting every day. And I'm like, if you only knew, it was Giannina staying on me, like, hey, where your pictures at? Here's an app, you store it, you export, right? And then, you know, a lot of that comes with people that are dating these days, and I think our show helped out. And then you saw things like Too Hot to Handle. Like it's learning that it doesn't just have to be about sex. It doesn't just have to be about, oh, like I'm gonna go out to the bars, get messed up, and find up somebody great. Like no, like take time just to go out and go to the park with somebody. Like get down and dirty with their soul and like learn to love them for who they are, get to know them for who they are, ask questions, and most importantly, learn to listen and not talk so much. Because I think a lot of us want to talk like, oh, I do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Just take time to listen to the other person and really, okay, well, why do they say that? And I think people will go so much further in their relationships. And, even me, I went through like, and it's hard to say, mental illness is huge, especially through quarantine, the challenges of being able to self-isolate and, you know, public distance and not be able to see those people you love so much all the time can really hit you in a depressive state. Even me, after the show came out, like I had a massive depression and, I stopped posting and my engagements and insights and all this stuff that are expected, when you get to that level. became overwhelming to me. And if you look at my posts, I've only posted like twice in the past month, and
That was another comment people kept saying. Tell him to post more. I want to see more.
that means the world to me because but I had to do what I just preached, and I was fine
Yeah,
self-love. And
exactly.
honestly, I had to get back in the gym. I had to start like doing things again to like strengthen my mental health. And I just really came out of that like a week ago, like the end of last week, beginning of this week. And I was like, glad we're doing this live because I was like, okay, like, hey, I can get back in this. Like, I want to be there to support not just my fans, but I'm fans of my fans. I go out and people are like, oh my God, Damian, like, I have a picture with you. And I've never turned anybody away from a picture. I've never turned anybody away from talking conversation with me in public because I feel like, in a sense, being a celebrity figure or fame, can change somebody. And I've done my best to not let it change me. I'm still super humble. And if anybody ever sees me out and they want to talk to me or FaceTime their friends, like, they're like, oh my gosh, my friend's the biggest fan of mine. You want to FaceTime her? Like, really? Like, you'll take the time? I'm like, yeah, because everyone in Love is Blind and in the cast is here because of everyone that watched it and believed in us. I wouldn't be sitting here on a live with you today or with 800,000 followers if people didn't believe
Mhm.
our story, my story, Cameron and Lauren's story. Like, the amount of love and encouragement we have from everybody is just overwhelming, and I thank everyone for that. So if you're ever out and you see me, like, come up and say, hey, don't even think about it. Like, that's what I tell
Look,
everyone. So
everyone needs to listen to that because I feel like there are so many people that want to take pictures with people that are on TV or whatever. And there are a lot of people that will say, no, no. And it's like, you got to this point. Yeah, exactly like you said, because of the people watching you. And I think that,
yeah,
like, I just appreciate in this chat alone, I feel like I've seen comments and I'm thinking the same thing. You've been so authentic and open, and it's just really nice to see that these are real people that we're watching on TV.
yeah. And that's the thing. It could happen to anybody at any time. I play scratch offs all the time, and I'm like, man, I wish I could hit the lottery one day. And then sort of like Giannina will be like, Damian, you did hit the lottery. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, okay. Um, but yeah, just I've never, even though I've had to find a more self love within me because I'm like, I started overthinking like my pictures have to be professional. Do I need to use a filter? Like, is this the right angle? I used to be in like killer great shape, and then I went through this depression. I lost like my muscle mass. I stopped working out, and I'm like, oh, now I'm self conscious, and I'm like, who cares? Because if people don't love me for who I am, then like don't follow me. Like, I,
Right.
it's not about the followers. It's about being able to spread love and happiness to the world, and the same with my fans. And it's we shouldn't be scared of how we look, how we wake up in the morning. Because at the end of the day, we're all people. And I think if anybody else was in a situation, they'd feel the same. And I've went to celebrities and I've been like, hey, can I get a picture with you? And some of them were like, no, 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 no. And I'm like,
Yeah, I
man,
put them
I was a
on my
huge,
list
I was a
of
huge
not a
fan of it.
fan.
Yeah, I was like, man, I've watched like every one of your movies ever. Like, I was like, and now I want to follow you and not talk to you ever again.
Now
So
I gotta go throw away those DVDs.
yeah, yeah, yeah. DVD. I haven't watched a DVD in years. Wow, but
I know.
uh, Sarah's over here
Um,
killing it with a DVD and Blu-ray player.
yeah, of course. No, I just was trying to think what else would it be on that you could physically throw away. Just unfollow, I guess, is what we do now, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I was just like, and that's the biggest thing too. I think even with people that come on the show, if the season 2 and 3 continue to blow up, and these other people find a sense of clout and fame with it, try not to change who you are because people are following us. And that's one thing I had to realize, and I've talked to other deep conversation with other castmates about is we don't need to change who we are once we become at this level because people fell in love with it, started following us because of who we were originally. Like, you can make adjustments, but still be you, right? Still have that thing that brought life to all your fans, and they're like, wow, don't just start following a trend. Continue to be that leader you were in the beginning. So I just, if the fame comes for other people that do the shows, just continue to stay you, stay humble, stay generous, give back the same way like the world's giving back to us. And I think everything will work out how it should for anyone in this situation for sure.
Yeah, so you have talked to me so long today, and I appreciate it so much. And we are going to cut this interview up and put it on a podcast on YouTube. So anyone that didn't make it to the live, but for everyone on right now, what do you have anything exciting in the works that we can follow along with, or just where is the best way to keeping up with you?
So it's gonna be definitely my Instagram. I'm gonna start posting more. And now that I've said that, I have to. So uh, I finally got like I think that little smile part of me back, the happy part, that I lost to myself. But yeah, so social media is gonna be definitely the best way to keep up. I've put some thoughts into trying to figure out exactly what I want to do for a YouTube channel. And I started working on that like 2 months ago and then put it on pause to recollect myself. But I recently went on like a little tour with Dylan from Tiger King, and
Oh, that's
Francesca.
interesting. Yeah.
Yes, that's Joe's husband. And then I went with Francesca from Too Hot to Handle and met up with her. And it was just interesting to see their thoughts and insights of how their lives changed as well, because they didn't know or expect what would happen, the same as me. And Dylan, super cool. He's like, man, I wasn't even in it a lot, but I'm Joe Exotic's husband, but everybody's like so nice and so welcoming. He's like, it's nice to be able to share that love. And, so Dylan, I got like, just created a great friendship with him out of it. And then Francesca the same way. It was just like, she, they portrayed her one way on the show, but she also has this amazing heart and so easy to talk to. And like, everybody's like, wow, like, why are you with her? And I'm like, because I ended up signing with a new management company, and we all had the same manager. So he was getting us to all interact and meet each other from different social media platforms. And the concept was great because it really brought me back out of my shell and said, hey, other people are in the same situation and how are they handling it? And I was able to really get on a one-on-one level with them. So it's just been great getting to interact with other people from different series that have went through the same thing. So at the end of the day, to everybody watching and out there is, reality TV, is I think becoming more popular because people want to see more authenticity.
Mhm.
And we, at the end of the day, the people that knew Damian before the show is still Damian. And when I'm out, people are like, wow, like you're so easy to talk to, like you're so nice, like, thank you. And I'm like, no, thank you. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'll take 5, 10 minutes, an hour for you. Uh, and that's because we're here because of everyone. So thank you to everyone that watched it and believed in us and our stories. And, I continue to hope that I can spread joy and happiness the same way that everyone has to me and the rest of the cast for sure. So.
That is amazing. I love that. Those were some great words that I think everyone can take advice from. Thank you so much for being such an open book and so great to talk to. We're going to just keep following along on your journey and can't wait to see what's next for you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I definitely appreciated getting to be on your show today and get to know you as well, Sarah. And if you ever have any questions or I can help you out with any other future interviews, let me know. So
awesome. Well, we'll definitely be catching up with you again.
all right. Thanks everyone that tuned in. Love you guys. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
somebody wanted you to blow him a kiss earlier.
Oh, well, there you go.
That's their
There it
wish.
is.
Thank you so much, Damian. Have a great day.
You too, Sarah. Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of The Sarah Scoop Show. Make sure to check back every week for more exclusive interviews and head to sarahscoop.com for more of the scoop.